We all know the song by now, but unfortunately, it seems to be applicable again. At the start of last month, I made this video about whether Leeds would stay up in the Premier League. But at the start of that video, I did say this. Unless something dramatic happens in the final 11 games, Leeds United will be promoted to the Premier League. Although when Leeds United are involved, there's always the possibility of something dramatic happening at the end of the season. At the time, Leeds United had a 7-point cushion keeping them in the automatic promotion places. Fast forward a month later and they're now level on points with third place Burnley. 1 win in 5 in the month of March is their worst run of form of the season, and it's once again raising concerns about them falling apart again. So why does this happen? Let's have a look. I'm Dilks from the second tier, and this is why Leeds United fall apart. First of all, let's talk about the song. We all know it, I'm sure we've all sung it at some point, but where does it come from? Well, excuse me for stating the bleeding obvious, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, it is of course from the 1980 Joy Division song, Love Will Tear Us Apart. And for years now, it's been commonly used as a chant in many different ways by football supporters. Very often, player X will tear you apart. But particularly around this time of year, it's become synonymous with the struggles of Leeds United. Now, it's always quite hard to narrow down exactly when a chant first started, but it's claimed it was actually started by Leeds fans themselves. It was apparently sung in the early 2000s when Leeds were suffering their fall from grace, going from the Champions League to League One, obviously a very different type of falling apart. But in the last 10 to 15 years, it's become more associated with Leeds bottling it. Now, as far as I'm aware, before 15 years ago, Leeds bottling it wasn't really a thing that they did. The only example I can really find prior to 2010 was the 1999-2000 season, where Leeds were top of the Premier League at the end of January, but ended up finishing third after winning just 6 of their final 16 games. Otherwise, Leeds falling apart in the way that we know it nowadays didn't really become a thing until they got promoted back to the Championship in 2010. And boy, did it become a thing. Leeds' first season back in the second tier in the 2010-11 season saw them become just the second side in Championship history to finish outside the top 6, having been in the top 2 on Christmas Day. In the 2011-12 season, they went from being in the top 6 on Christmas Day to finishing 14th. A couple of seasons later, in the 2013-14 season, Leeds would once again be in the top 6 on Christmas Day, but would end up finishing 15th. And then in the 2016-17 season, Leeds would be in the playoffs all the way from November until mid-April, until finishing 7th because they won just 1 of their final 8 games. So 4 out of 8 seasons there where Leeds were in a really promising position and ended up massively underachieving. But if you think that's bad, the worst is yet to come. This video is brought to you by our good friends at SBK. If you haven't heard of them yet, then where have you been? SBK's comprehensive range of markets and exclusive offers makes it the best place to bet on the Championship this season. Whether you're creating an accumulator or customizing your bet builder, SBK has got you covered. Don't believe us? Sign up today and find out. The 2018-19 season saw Leeds United appoint Marcelo Bielsa. The world-renowned coach came in as a huge sign of ambition from the club to finally get back to the Premier League. And things started brilliantly. Leeds were top of the league at Christmas, had a 6-point cushion inside the automatics, and were cruising along. But then their form dropped off. They won 10 of their next 18 games after Boxing Day. Now, it wasn't great, but it still wasn't bad. Leeds was still heading into the final 4 games in the automatic promotion places. But then, probably one of the most infamous games in Championship history, Leeds United welcomed Wigan Athletic to Elland Road, a Wigan side fighting to stay up and being particularly renowned for being terrible away. They had won just once away from home all season up until that point. Wigan had a man sent off after 14 minutes and Leeds even went ahead. However, Leeds would go on to lose 2-1. It's one of the most shocking results the league has ever seen. And while it didn't end Leeds' promotion hopes, it certainly sent them spiralling. They would finish 3rd despite spending 34 of the 46 game weeks that season in the top 2. Obviously very disappointing, but it wasn't over because Leeds still had the playoffs and they headed into them as the favourites. It was a chance for them to right the wrongs of the season. But then Leeds were up against their old rival in Derby County, the same season that all the Spygate stuff happened, by the way. Leeds had done the league double already over Derby that season and then beat them 1-0 in the first leg. Now, up until that point, no team in Championship history had ever lost a playoff semi-final after winning the first leg away from home. Oh God. If ever there was a game which encapsulates Leeds United falling apart, then it's this one. In fact, if there's a season which encapsulates Leeds United falling apart, then it's this one. They fell apart twice. Leeds would go on to finally not fall apart the season afterwards when they won promotion to the Premier League in 2020, although no Leeds fans were there to see it because of the pandemic. However, their first season back in the Premier League was very successful. They made some brilliant signings and would end up finishing 9th. So it looked like Leeds would build from there and re-establish themselves as a Premier League side. But then Leeds would go on to finish 17th the following season and then be relegated the season after that. There wasn't a dramatic collapse in either of those 2 seasons. This was more of a falling apart over 2 seasons. And so we get to last season. Now Leeds started slowly and will find themselves quite a way behind Leicester and Ipswich at the top of the table at the halfway stage. But a remarkable run of 13 wins from 15 plus the top 2 dropping off saw them surge to the top of the table. Leeds headed into the final 8 games with all the momentum behind them. But then Leeds would win just 2 of their final 8 and managed to lose more games in that time than they had done in the previous 27 games. It included a 4-0 loss away at relegation fighting QPR, which all but killed off their automatic promotion hopes. So they were once again involved in the playoffs and once again heading into them as the favourites. There was a lot of expectation on them to get the job done this time around, but you know what's coming. After looking back to their best in the second leg of their semi-final against Norwich, Leeds faced Southampton in the final, but Leeds didn't turn up. Despite having most of the ball, they created next to nothing, and it wasn't until they hit the bar with 5 minutes to go that they actually even came close. They were going to lose 1-0. So now we arrive at this season, where Leeds have been the heavy favourites for promotion throughout the entire campaign, but after going 7 points clear of 3rd place, they've won just 1 of their 5 games since then. All but one of those games have been against sides in the bottom half, by the way. It's been a gigantic wobble. The players look nervous, they appear to be double thinking things, and they're making mistakes that they weren't making before. Well, one player was making them before. But Leeds look rattled, and here's a reason to be even more concerned. Leeds' drop off in form at the end of last season didn't actually happen until after the March international break. This one has started early. Now, it is worth pointing out that 4 of Leeds' 7 remaining games are against sides in the bottom 7, so there's every chance that they go on and get the job done. But if they don't, you could make a fair argument that this is the worst case yet of Leeds falling apart again. So let's answer the big question here. Why do Leeds United fall apart? I think the big overarching reason is everyone at Leeds knows about the falling apart tag. I think the players head into games at around this time of the season with the idea in their head that they might be falling apart, and then it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. One thing goes wrong, they think to themselves, oh no, are we falling apart? That leads to another thing going wrong, then another, and then before you know it, they've fallen apart. And it's not just the players, you can tell the fans feel it as well. So often Ellen Road is a fortress for Leeds, and it can help them win games, but it can also be a detriment to them. As soon as something goes wrong, you can tell there's nerves around the ground. It becomes this huge big bowl of nerves, which is obviously going to affect the players. Put it this way, is it any coincidence that Leeds' only promotion to the Premier League in the last 30 years happened when there weren't any fans on the ground? Of course, I'm not blaming the fans. They're reacting the same way that every fan base would, and it's up to the players to be able to cope with that when everything is not going their way. But on multiple occasions now, we've seen that they struggle. So if Leeds are going to not fall apart this season, they have to cope with that pressure. Otherwise, that tag is only going to get bigger and bigger. So there you have it. This has been Why Do Leeds United Fall Apart? Do you agree with me? Do you think they'll get the job done this season? Let me know in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe for more content like this. I've been Dilks from the Second Tier, and a big thank you for watching.